Good evening, dear attendees. I can see people joining, so I will make a quick introduction before we start our conversation. So today, our guest for the careers webinar is Andy Watriquant from Huxley, and we will talk about job market in Luxembourg, and we will also focus on ESG jobs because it's Andy's big passion. I would like to remind you that we will gladly answer all your questions, and in order to ask your questions, please leave them in the Q&A box. You can also leave it in the chat if you prefer, and do not wait till the last minute, so we have enough time to answer all of them. Thank you very much for joining and for your time. Andy, I know that you are a senior career advisor at Huxley, but I know that you became a part of Huxley not so long ago, and I would like to ask you to make a little introduction and let us know why you actually changed your work path.
Thank you very much, Natalia, for the invitation. And I will say a big hello also to Stefan, and thank you to the LPEA. That's the most tough question. I was just looking for human development. So after nearly 15 years in the pharmaceutical industry, which was very individual, I was looking to be more involved in the talent acquisition, on the human development. So I do not have any experience. So my idea was to join training during the evening, training and in human resources. And one of my colleagues was from Huxley, and she let me his business card. And 6 months after, I was a senior career advisor at Huxley. So it's so simple as this.
I see. So let's start our conversation about the job market. And I think the question which people are very interested at the moment is what is the situation in job market at the moment, of course, due to the COVID and this very unprecedented and difficult time.
You're right. There is, I will not comment, Natalia, Adam or static figures. I will give you my feedback and the feedback of my clients. Yeah, I have to admit that since March, April, it was very tough on the recruitment, not only for Huxley, but I think for a lot of companies. There is few trends. Now, since last few weeks, the market is better, much better. So that's very positive. But a lot of our clients are still, you know, on a waiting mode, on some freezing recruitment. That's one trend. In March, April, it was much more replacement than new position. So that's an interesting point. The second trend, it's certainly that we receive much more application, us at Huxley, but also our clients. It's certainly related, in my opinion, to the home working, because it's so easy to apply for a job, to conduct some interviews, and just to stay at home. For the private equity side, there is two things. One is related to the Brexit. You know that Luxembourg is one of the main beneficiaries of the Brexit, and we are waiting certainly 70 companies coming in Luxembourg, and I'm sure that it will be certainly interesting on the job market and certainly on the private equity side. To be more specific, if I may, on the private equity, you mentioned on your website that there is certainly 900 open positions. I would say I agree if we combine all the positions, I mean from the service provider, but also for investor or from management companies. There is a huge need in fund accounting, risk and compliance, but also in investor relationship. If we focused on small companies, management companies, I would say that it's more limited at the moment, and we are just waiting to see how the situation is evolving.
Okay, and I know that ESG is a big passion of yours, and talking about the job market, what is the situation in ESG, the job market? How would you describe that?
That's very specific. You know, we are going from a shift from traditional finance to sustainable finance, and Luxembourg is really involved in this shift. And what's particularly true is that we already have the chance to have in Luxembourg some service providers, big fours, investment companies, private equity, venture capital companies. We are really involved on sustainable finance and ESG. So, and on the other side, and it's the most challenging part, in next March and in July, we are expecting two strong regulatory change. In few words, you have the ESG disclosure regulatory, and you have the EU taxonomy. So I think that everybody involved in sustainable finance know what does it mean. But in summarize, there is a lack of academic resources, but there is also a lack of human resources to absorb this shift from traditional finance to sustainable finance. And there is also, in my opinion, a lack to join also the forthcoming regulation.
I see. Andy, the next question I would like to ask you is probably more, it's more about the actual job that you do. And what are you interested in when you're looking for candidates? Yes, what do you look at?
I would say certainly the academic background, but also the technical skills. If we speak about sustainable finance and ESG, certainly somebody who has already made a certification, who already involved in a company, especially in Luxembourg on sustainable finance and ESG, is quite interesting. But what it attracts, it's related to our market. At Huxley, we are an experienced team. So my daily task is always to be involved on risk and compliance. So it means that all application or all candidates with a particular interest on risk and compliance, and moreover on ESG and sustainable finance, it's something attractive for me.
And how do you interview candidates? Because I know that there are many different types of approaches. I've heard that people do the 16 personalities test and all different kinds of things. Do you implement anything of these to your process?
Yes, for sure. We try to interview on a face-to-face basis. With the COVID, we used mobile application like everyone. All candidates who have an interview to our clients and to the companies. So that's the most important thing. We are not a CV provider. We are working with humans. So it means that recruitment for me and for my colleague, it's not by phone, it's on a face-to-face basis. So that's one of ways how to interview candidates. We do not perform at the moment a personality test, even if we have 2 psychologists in our teams, but we are more involved, to be honest, for example, in some technical tests, in accounting, for example, or myself, I manage a portfolio analyst position at the moment, and to the request of my clients, I have to ask some technical tests to the candidates. We spare a lot of time with candidates by phone on the face-to-face, but it's also really important, for the fit, Natalia, that we also conduct a reference check. It's a useful tools to assess the personality of the candidates. by contacting, for example, a former manager or a former colleague to have a global overview of the candidates. That's it.
And you still meet, you try to meet face to face?
At the moment, no. We have, due to the COVID situation, that's not possible. That's an issue. But we continue by Zoom, by Skype, by Teams, and it works very well. Once again, it's really important to meet the candidates, because it's not a question of technical skills. It's not a question of academic background. It's also to use behavioral situation to be sure that we are on the same page from candidate expectation and companies' expectations.
And you know, I think private equity is a quite specific sector, and these candidates who come to you and who you interview, I know that probably you work mostly with high-level professionals, maybe not so much with young people, as I understand. And but do you think that there are things that people do not really understand when they come looking for a job in private equity? So
no, I'm working with young people to senior people and to executive people. So no, we are working with everybody. I'm working with everybody. So, but yes, you're right. You're right. For private equity, I think there is two issues when I see an application on if we have a request from a companies. First is the technical issues. And for example, thanks to the LPEA, you provide very nice training. And it's really important because candidates would like to go to the private equity side, but they do not have a real idea, for example, of some specific vocabulary of the private equity. So I will certainly advise to go deeper in the vocabulary process of the private equity. That's the first issue. The second issue is certainly related to the mindset. Private equity, venture capital, it's very specific. It's close to the business. You have to have an entrepreneurial mindset. A portfolio analyst position is not a deal position. Making the oversight is just making the second line of defense. You know, you have to be more involved through companies, because behind your private equity companies, it's small mid caps. So that's, I think, the two issues when we speak about private equity and talent in private equity.
And you know, when you speak to candidates yourself, and are there sometimes things that alert you, and you know that it's not like this person is not going to, no.
You know, one of the main clue of this job is to have no judgment, really. But yes, certainly mistake in CV. It happens, related to date, related to French or English mistake in the CV. That's something maybe not wrong, but it's important. It alerts me. The second thing during phone call interview or face-to-face interview is certainly salary expectation. Everybody has the right to have salary expectation, but for our clients, for the companies, they want to be sure that it's not just for a money-driven reason that they want to join companies. And many HR people ask us a lot of support to manage, for example, counteroffer issues. So that's the second alert for me. The third one, and once again, it's not a judgment, but we need to explain and to find motivation or to explain the reason, is certainly when people have too many professional transition. But once again, it's something quietly different when we speak in risk and compliance. And if we speak about IT, in IT, for example, candidates have a lot of mission. So that's different, and it depends really of the market. So that's the third alert about candidates.
And Andy, I have a question that we always argue about within the team. How long can your CV be? How many pages?
For me, personally, only one, because the CV is just a tool to decrease a level of uncertainty. But on the other side, there is no tip really. If you have a deep experience and you want to share this experience, whether it is 1, 2, or 3 page, I think it should translate your added value for the position, first thing, and certainly to show who you are. So there is no good or bad answer to the question. For me, 1 page, it's enough. But for my colleagues or for others, it requires maybe 2 or 3 pages.
And for example, you know, in Luxembourg, I think many people, when they move, they have this uncertainty if they can work in Luxembourg if for sure they don't know French or German. So what would you say if you don't know any of the languages which are common for Luxembourg except English? Is it still fine, and are you still looking at these candidates?
Sure, but as a kind reminder, and it's certainly very important in private equity, venture capital, English in finance is the #1 languages. The French is an asset because we are in a French culture. We say we have the cross-border from Belgium or for France, certainly, and even in Luxembourg, but English still remains the language #1. Specifically to private equity, Natalia, I think that we have a lot of Nordic, Dutch, Germany private equity companies. So it's certainly an asset when you are involved in the client relationship, in the deal teams, to have these languages. A last maybe comment is related to, we have the chance to have in Luxembourg a lot of Chinese companies. So in my opinion, language, it's an added value. First English and the others added value. You have, for example, from these last 2 years, I have to admit that English is the first languages and the other ones are an asset. For example, for the culture of a department, for the culture of a specific manager, but the requirement is certainly to be fluent in English.
Okay, and you know, you mentioned that sometimes people they change the field of work, and my question is, what if the person who wants to work in private equity actually worked in another field before, and what does it really take, for example, to go from a service provider, maybe for example a Big Four, to the private equity for example, to GP side?
There's 2 parts in your question, if I may.
Yes.
Regarding to change of field, I'm proof that it's possible. But it's tough, really, first thing. And often there is a salary step back. You have to keep in mind. You know, it's certainly more easy to move internally on the same company. Today, companies are looking for, plug and play candidates. It means that if tomorrow I would like to, for example, have a career in compliance, I manage a lot of technical skills of compliance, but I never be a junior or a compliance officer, and companies will certainly choose, even if I want to change of field, certainly somebody coming from the field. Yes, it's possible, really, and I want to believe in this idea, but there is some sacrifice to do. Regarding to move from a service provider to a ManCo, to a private equity company, I think that we have a lot of successful stories in Luxembourg to see that it's possible to evolve from a Big Four, from a service provider to a ManCo. That's really wonderful. But also, it's a question of flexibility. It's a question of to be close to the business. Once again, to have an entrepreneurial mindset. It's possible, yes, but it takes time. You know, it's a different way of working. When you are in a big four or in a service provider, you have a team, you have a lot of different departments. For example, you have a question about tax compliance, you can call your colleagues of your tax compliance department. When you are involved in a ManCo, it's different. You are acting in like it was your own company. As a joke, but you know, managing director explained that there are maybe 4 or 5 in a small companies, and they have to deal on the morning between the compliance, the portfolio, the risk, and during the lunchtime just to buy the coffee for the team of the management company. So it's 2 different things. But yes, it's possible. And Stefan of the LPEA showed a few days ago that it's really possible to move from a service provider to a small ManCos in the private equity. Yes, for sure.
And do you think that considering the situation, companies are still hiring young people and are still offering the same amount of internships, for example, this year? And do you think, like, how do you expect the situation will evolve till the end of the year?
Companies are still wants to hire young people, really. Some of our clients, conduct graduate programs. It's really interesting because it permits to candidates to go to some branch of the companies, and at the end of the year, they have an indeterminate contract. Myself, I'm currently recruiting a portfolio analyst position, and it's possible for me, thanks to my clients, to have a look to somebody coming from the school. Regarding sustainable finance and ESG, it's certainly much more relevant because young people are attracted by sustainable finance. They want, to change the world. And it's certainly an added value today to have a look on young people with this passion and not maybe only related to salary expectation in Luxembourg, to be more involved and certainly in sustainable finance.
And talking about young people, we also launched a career section on the website where we receive different CVs of young professionals, which we later share with our members. And my question here is, we have, for example, we have many people who apply from outside of European Union. And my question would be, do you think that if you want to live and work in Luxembourg, is it still, and if you live, for example, in Delhi or in the US, because we received these CVs as well, do you think it's possible, and are companies open to hire people from non-European Union?
Everything is possible. This morning, really, I was in contact with somebody from the Middle East. So yes, everything is possible. You have always the concern of the work permit. Do not forget the work permit question, but I think it's not so expensive, if I remember well. And some of our clients conduct the work permit for the relevant candidates. But yes, it's really important. Natalia, if you remember 10 years ago, Luxembourg, it was just focused on Belgium, France, Germany, yes. And now we are looking from the European countries, and yes, certainly outside the European Union. In sustainable finance, you cannot imagine all the wonderful candidates you have in Canada, in the Nordic countries, even in China, for Chinese people. So yes, it's certainly an asset, once again, to not focus on, the location of the candidates, but about what its added value. And if it's coming from outside the European Union, why not?
And if we think about ESG jobs, how important do you think is the education in this particular sector? Because as I understand, if you would like to do ESG, like sustainable finance related job, you need some extra knowledge.
You're right. I think that now we have no related ESG development in some department in Luxembourg. So to be clear with the attendance, I think that we will not have a lot of, new position very specific to ESG and sustainable finance. But on the other side, we have these regulatory deadlines. And a lot of companies are aware that they have to do something. They are set up specific teams related to the risk, the compliance, the portfolio, the legals. And there is a lack of resources. I conduct with two of my colleagues a survey this summer. And it shows really that there is a lack of resources and a lack of knowledges. And related to your question, Natalia, I will advise certainly to follow training related to sustainable finance. It should be an asset for the forthcoming months. You have the House of Training in Luxembourg with a lot of success. If you remember a few months ago, the Luxembourg Stock Exchange launched the Green Academy. And you have a lot of university, I will not quote one or another one, but you have university who provide now sustainable finance courses. But if you have the same conversation with the headhunters in the Nordic countries, the competition is tough because a lot of people has already a master in sustainable finance. So we are now, to be honest, at the beginning, there is some challenge, the regulatory framework. Yes, there will certainly not full jobs in ESG, but private equity, to conclude, was the first industry to trust me and to adapt some job description, 10%, 50% of the job description related to the development of sustainable finance and to take into consideration ESG on the risk, on the compliance, or in the portfolio side.
And I just want to remind everyone that at LPEA Academy, which was in summer, and the next one is coming in February, we also have the ESG module with Hedda Paulsen-Moller from Time. And she also, she has the course about ESG and sustainable finance. And Andy, but how do you think the ESG jobs will actually be developing? Do you think there will be a higher demand for this? And do you think that this particular sector really has the potential to grow? Because there are many different opinions about that.
My opinion is that yes, there is a huge development, but once again, not related to full job on ESG. Yes, if you are on a service provider, if you are in some impact companies, if you are in some very dedicated venture capital companies involved in the impact development, that's possible. But my belief is that we will have in the forthcoming months and years a need of external resources, of experts in ESG and sustainable finance to challenge the teams in London, in Frankfurt, in Paris, to be able, regarding certainly the ESG disclosure regulation, to be able to provide the right technical knowledge and the right scope to sustainable finance. So yes, we are going from, full marketing side of the ESG and sustainable finance to the real economy. And when you see all the involvement of private equity, especially private equity in the ESG and sustainable finance, that's my belief that in the forthcoming months, sure, we will have a request. And the survey we conduct show that there is a need of external resources to provide, yes, the suitable position in Luxembourg.
Thank you. So let's have a look at the Q&A. I think someone left a question for you.
Yeah, so in the wrong way. I'm based in New York. I'm looking for Luxembourg. The higher regulatory oversight, yes. Making private equity investment more difficult. Laurie, yeah, that's a tough question. Private equity is certainly interesting in Luxembourg. Yes, Luxembourg has a strong regulatory development. I think that the CSSF is certainly best in class related to regulatory involvement. I'm not sure if I understand well the question, but in my opinion, there is a place for the private equity development in Luxembourg. You know, we speak about the Brexit, and I will, if I may, I will quote one of your colleagues, Natalia Kloos-Mansveld, and he said, Luxembourg must become a market which would not necessarily compete with New York or London, but which should not remain a simple back office or middle office. It must bring in more directors, fund managers, and portfolio managers in order to attract more investors to make them discover more product. And I will add, certainly, also related to sustainable finance and ESG. Laurie, we have a huge stable economic and political system in Luxembourg. Private equity, it's 90 of the 20 top private equity companies in Luxembourg. And private equity was pioneer in the ESG development. I will quote Bain Capital, KKR, and so many more. So yes, I will advise certainly this person to have a look on the challenge to work in Luxembourg. There is a place in Luxembourg, and the regulatory environment is just something normal, I think, and related to the development of the finance in Luxembourg, the sustainability bonds, notably, there is certainly a future in private equity and ESG in Luxembourg. And not only in London and in New York.
And we have another question from William in the chat. Hello, I would like to ask if it's possible to join PE/RE teams in Luxembourg without having a prior experience either in the area or in Luxembourg. Thanks.
Yes, it's possible. Once again, it's a question of mindset. It's a question of intellectual curiosity. If I can give an advice, you know, as a recruiter, as a headhunter, we always compare our knowledges to an orange, you know, the fruit. We need to know all the first layer, and candidates and clients, it needs to, you know, a complete slice of an orange. That's the same thing. For these candidates, the most important thing is the intellectual curiosity. If you have an interest to the private equity, you have to have, you make your own research about the vocabulary, what's the difference between ERR and, for example, multiple, to know what's the waterfall distribution pattern. Everybody can find this, information. And after that, it's if you feel that you are close to the business, that you have some, I would say, intellectual development, and you are smart and well-rounded people, I think everything is possible.
Thank you, Andy. I think, yes, so Laurie just wrote, thank you. I myself am still in this transition, and I think we have no more questions from the public, from the attendees. I just want to remind you that we have a career section on our website. So if you're looking for a job in private equity or venture capital, you can leave your information on the website, and we will later share it with our members who are looking for new candidates. So please welcome. You can also find vacancies related to private equity and venture capital in the same section. Andy, thank you very much for joining today.
Thank you. If I may, you know, at Huxley, Our leitmotiv is to bring skilled people together to build the future. And we are involved in nearly 11 of the Sustainable Development Goals. So even in the recruitment area, in the talent acquisition area, there is a place for sustainable finance, for ESG. Private equity is certainly one of the best ways to approach sustainable finance. And once again, it's just a question to explain professional transition, to explain academic choice. And after that, the question is the added value of everybody. And if we can explain the added value for candidates of a company, that's the best way to succeed.
Thank you, Andy. And dear attendees, also we will have our next webinar in October with KPMG. And if you have some specific questions, you can let me know through the survey, which you will receive for this webinar, or by email, or you can leave comments in LinkedIn when the relevant event will be published. Thank you very much for attending. I hope you liked it. I hope you got your insights. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.